The neon-bathed corridors of Harmony Hub buzzed with the usual evening crowd, traders, travelers, and thrill-seekers from across the galaxy, all drawn to the massive space station's promise of neutral ground and exotic experiences. Among the countless establishments lining the promenade, Terra's kitchen stood out not for its size or flashy exterior, but for the warm, golden light spilling from its windows and the tantalizing aromas that seemed to pull passers-by toward its modest entrance. Marcus Reed wiped his hands on his apron as he surveyed his domain, 20 tables, a small but efficient kitchen, and walls decorated with images of Earth's countryside. 3 years ago, he'd been just another cook on a transport vessel, but a lucky investment and an even luckier inheritance had allowed him to open this little slice of home among the stars. Tonight felt special, though he couldn't quite put his finger on why. The door chimed softly as his evening's most anticipated guest entered. Zara Velfani moved with the fluid grace characteristic of her Altarian heritage, her crystalline skin catching the restaurant's warm lighting and refracting it into subtle rainbows. Her violet eyes, large and luminous, swept the interior with the analytical gaze of someone accustomed to evaluating every detail. Silver hair, almost metallic in its sheen, was pulled back in an elegant twist that accentuated the delicate bone structure of her face. Marcus felt his breath catch. He'd seen Altarians before, they weren't uncommon on Harmony Hub, but something about this woman was different. Perhaps it was the confident way she carried herself, or maybe the slight smile that played at the corners of her mouth as she took in his carefully curated Earth atmosphere. "Table for one?" he asked, approaching with what he hoped was professional composure. "Actually, I have a reservation." Zara Velfani. Her voice carried the musical quality typical of her species, but with an underlying warmth that made Marcus's pulse quicken. He checked his tablet, though he already knew who she was. Zara Velfani, food critic for the Galactic Culinary Review, whose articles could make or break establishments across 3 sectors. Her request for a reservation had both thrilled and terrified him. "Right this way, Ms. Velfani. I've prepared our best table for you." He led her to a corner booth with a view of the station's observation deck, where ships drifted past like luminous fish in the cosmic dark. As she settled into the seat, her bodysuit, a shimmering fabric that seemed to shift between deep purple and midnight blue, caught the candlelight. "I'll be honest, Mr. Reed. Marcus Reed. I'm the owner and chef. Mr. Reed. I wasn't expecting much when I decided to review Terra's kitchen. Earth cuisine isn't exactly known for its sophistication among galactic food circles." She paused, studying his face. "But the aromas from your kitchen are intriguing." Marcus grinned, his nervousness beginning to fade. "Give me a chance to change your mind about Earth food. What brings you to our little corner of the galaxy?" "Professional curiosity. I've been hearing whispers about this place. Apparently, you serve something that tastes like chicken, and half the station's alien population is obsessed with it. The problem is, no one seems to know what chicken actually is." Marcus laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Would you like the full explanation, or should I just bring you the mystery dish?" Zara's violet eyes sparkled with amusement. "Surprise me. But I want the story too." As Marcus headed to the kitchen, he found himself moving with extra care, wanting every detail of her meal to be perfect. He selected his finest pieces of free-range Earth chicken, seasoned them with herbs from his personal hydroponic garden, and prepared them with a technique his grandmother had taught him decades ago. The familiar motions calmed his nerves while his mind raced with thoughts of the beautiful critic waiting at table 7. 20 minutes later, he returned with a plate that showcased golden brown chicken breast alongside roasted vegetables that had never seen Earth soil but had been cultivated to approximate familiar flavors. The presentation was simple but elegant, letting the food speak for itself. Zara examined the dish with professional interest before taking her first bite. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the critic's mask slipped away, revealing genuine surprise and pleasure. "This is..." She paused, searching for words. "It's completely unlike anything I've ever tasted, yet somehow familiar. The texture is perfect, tender but with substance. The flavor is complex but not overwhelming. It's like discovering a new primary color. Marcus slid into the seat across from her, abandoning any pretense of professional distance. That's chicken. Or rather, that's what chicken tastes like when it's raised properly and cooked with care. But what is chicken? She asked, taking another bite with obvious enjoyment. Birds. We raise them on Earth for food. They're about this big. He held his hands apart, mostly harmless creatures that spend their days pecking at grain and chasing insects. Nothing particularly special about them, except half the galaxy seems to know this flavor without ever having encountered the source, Zara finished, her tone thoughtful. I've tasted dozens of dishes from dozens of worlds, all claiming to taste like chicken. But none of them tasted like this. Marcus nodded. It's the strangest thing. I've traveled all over, and everywhere I go, aliens describe familiar foods in terms of chicken. But when I ask if they've ever actually eaten chicken, the answer is always no. As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed from professional topics to personal ones. Marcus found himself telling her about his childhood on Earth's agricultural colonies, about learning to cook from his grandmother while watching real chickens peck around the farmyard. Zara shared stories of her travels across the galaxy, her quest to understand the diverse food cultures of countless species. You know, she said, swirling the wine he'd paired with dinner, in all my travels, I've never encountered a mystery quite like this. How does a flavor become universal without the source being distributed? Maybe chickens are just the perfect food, Marcus suggested with a smile. The galactic standard that everything else gets compared to. Or maybe, Zara's eyes took on a mischievous glint, your chickens are more special than you realize. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of 3 customers who immediately caught Marcus's attention. They were Kralian traders, their scaled skin reflecting the restaurant's lighting in patterns that seemed almost agitated. But what struck him as odd was their intense focus on the other diners' plates and their whispered conversations in rapid Kralian. Excuse me, one of them approached the table. We hear you serve the authentic chicken flavor. We would like to purchase your supply. Marcus blinked in surprise. I'm sorry, what? Your chicken. We wish to buy all of it. Name your price. Zara's violet eyes narrowed slightly, her journalist instincts clearly aroused. That's an unusual request. Most restaurants don't sell their raw ingredients to customers. The Kralian scales shifted to a deeper red, a sign of agitation Marcus recognized from his trading days. This is not for consumption. We have business interests in chicken flavor. I'm afraid that's not how restaurants work, Marcus said carefully. If you'd like to order from the menu. We will pay 10 times market value, another Kralian interjected. Cash, untraceable. The third Kralian hissed something in their native language, and all 3 quickly retreated to a corner table, though their intense stares continued to make Marcus uncomfortable. That was strange, Zara murmured, her tone now carrying a note of professional intrigue. In 30 years of food criticism, I've never seen anyone try to buy out a restaurant's entire inventory of one ingredient. Marcus nodded, his mind racing. It's not the first time, either. Last week, a group of Centaurian merchants made a similar offer. And before that, some vegan traders asked detailed questions about my supply chain. Marcus, Zara's voice dropped to almost a whisper, I think there's more to your chicken mystery than either of us realized. As if summoned by her words, his communication device chimed with an urgent message from his supplier on Earth, all chicken shipments suspended indefinitely. Galactic Food Authority investigation in progress. Will advise. Marcus showed the message to Zara, whose violet eyes widened with surprise and something that looked like excitement. Well, she said, reaching across the table to place her hand over his, sending an electric thrill through his arm, it looks like I've stumbled onto the story of a lifetime. And you, Marcus Reed, are right at the center of it. The warmth of her touch and the promise in her eyes made Marcus's heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with mysterious chicken conspiracies. Whatever was happening with chicken across the galaxy, he was suddenly very grateful it had brought Zara Velthani into his restaurant, and into his life. Outside, the Kralian traders spoke in urgent whispers into communication devices, their scales flickering with patterns of excitement and greed. In the shadows of Harmony Hub's corridors, other figures moved with purpose, all drawn by rumors of authentic chicken flavor and the small Earth restaurant that seemed to be at the center of a mystery spanning the galaxy. The evening had started with a simple dinner review. By its end, Marcus and Zara found themselves at the beginning of something much larger, and much more dangerous, than either had anticipated. But as they sat together, her hand still resting on his, both felt a thrill that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the spark of connection that had ignited between them over a simple meal that might not be simple at all. The cargo bay of Harmony Hub hummed with the constant activity of interstellar commerce, but Jake Morrison had eyes only for his missing shipment. 24 hours ago, he'd docked his freight vessel Wanderer's Dream with a hold full of premium Earth livestock, including 50 of the finest free-range chickens from the Terran Nova colony. Now, standing before an empty cargo container, he felt the familiar knot of frustration that came with unexplained losses. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, running a hand through his sandy brown hair. At 32, Jake had been hauling freight between Earth colonies and outer stations for 8 years, and he'd never lost a shipment to simple theft. Pirates, sure. Mechanical failures, definitely. But chickens didn't just vanish from a secured cargo bay. "Mr. Morrison." Jake turned at the sound of his name, spoken in a voice that carried both authority and a hint of an accent he couldn't quite place. The woman approaching him wore the dark blue uniform of Harmony Hub security, but everything else about her defied easy categorization. Her skin held the faint luminescence typical of vegan heritage, but her bone structure was distinctly human. Her hair, a cascade of deep auburn with threads of silver that caught the cargo bay's harsh lighting, was pulled back in a practical ponytail that somehow managed to look elegant. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, one emerald green, the other golden amber, a genetic quirk that spoke of mixed ancestry and made it impossible to look away. "I'm Officer Neera Ashworth, Station Security. I understand you've had some cargo go missing." Jake found his voice, though it came out rougher than intended. 50 chickens, prime stock from Terra Nova. Worth about 8,000 credits on the open market, but that's not the point. My reputation depends on reliable delivery. Neera's mismatched eyes narrowed with interest as she consulted her tablet. Chickens. That's the third livestock theft this month, all involving Earth poultry. She looked up at him, and Jake felt something electric pass between them. "Mind if I take a look at your ship's manifest?" "Of course." Jake led her toward his vessel, acutely aware of her presence beside him. She moved with the fluid grace of someone comfortable in her own skin, despite what he suspected might be a complicated heritage. "You said third theft. There's a pattern." "More than a pattern. Someone specifically targeting chicken shipments. Your cargo isn't the first to disappear, and I doubt it'll be the last." She paused at the Wanderer's Dream's cargo ramp, studying the ship with professional interest. "Nice vessel. Modified Stellar-class freighter. You know ships." Jake was impressed despite his frustration. "My father was a trader before he settled on Vega Prime. I grew up around freight haulers." A shadow passed across her features. "He always said the most dangerous cargo wasn't the valuable stuff, it was whatever someone wanted badly enough to kill for." They climbed aboard, and Jake couldn't help but notice how Neera's hybrid heritage became more apparent in the ship's softer lighting. The vegan luminescence in her skin created subtle patterns that shifted as she moved, while her human features gave her an approachability that pure-blood Vegas often lacked. "Your security footage," she said, settling into the co-pilot's chair with an ease that suggested familiarity with spacecraft. "Let's see what happened to your chickens." Jake pulled up the cargo bay feeds on his main screen, fast-forwarding through hours of empty corridor until figures appeared. "There," he said, pausing the playback. 3 individuals, faces obscured. They knew exactly where they were going. Neera leaned closer to study the screen, her shoulder brushing against his. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through Jake's system, and he had to force himself to concentrate on the footage. Her scent, something like starflowers and ozone, filled his awareness. "Professional job," she murmured, her breath warm against his ear. "See how they disable the security locks? That's military-grade tech. This isn't petty theft. Military?" Jake turned to face her, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting. Who the hell stages a military operation to steal chickens? Neera's smile was both amused and troubled. Someone who thinks chickens are worth more than 8,000 credits. Over the next hour, they reviewed security footage from throughout the station, tracking the thieves' movements with growing amazement. The chicken theft had been coordinated with precision timing, involving 6 individuals and equipment worth more than the stolen livestock. "This is insane," Jake said, leaning back in his chair. "I've hauled everything from rare minerals to classified tech, and nobody's ever gone to this much trouble for any of it. What's so special about Earth chickens?" Neera asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer would be anything but simple. "That's what I keep asking myself. They're just birds. Good protein source, easy to raise, taste decent. Nothing exotic about them. Except half the galaxy knows that taste without ever encountering the source," Neera said thoughtfully. "I've been investigating the food trade for 2 years, and the number of species that reference chicken flavor is statistically impossible if chickens have only been available since humans joined the galactic community." Jake stared at her, pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known existed suddenly clicking into place. "You think there's something we don't know about chickens?" "I think there's something someone doesn't want us to know." Neera's mismatched eyes held his gaze intently. "Jake, may I call you Jake? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." The way she said his name made his pulse quicken. "Shoot. Have you ever noticed anything unusual about your chicken shipments? Different behavior from the birds, unexpected interest from buyers, anything that seemed off?" Jake considered the question seriously, memories of countless cargo runs filtering through his mind. "Actually, yes. Over the past 6 months, I've had more requests for chicken transport than I can handle. The rates buyers are willing to pay have tripled. And the birds." He paused, wondering if he'd sound crazy. "They seem calmer than they should be. Space travel usually stresses livestock, but these chickens act like they're enjoying the ride." Neera's expression grew more intense. "Jake, I need you to help me with something. There's an underground market operating in the station's lower levels. High-end exotic foods, very exclusive clientele. I've been trying to get inside for months, but I need the right cover story." "What kind of cover story?" She stood up, moving to the viewport where stars wheeled slowly past. The light played across her luminescent skin, creating patterns that Jake found hypnotic. A freight pilot with access to premium Earth livestock. Someone who might have connections to acquire special cargo. Jake joined her at the viewport, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "You want me to go undercover with you? It could be dangerous. These people are organized, well-funded, and clearly willing to commit crimes for chicken. But if we can get inside their operation, we might find out what happened to my cargo and why it was worth stealing." "Exactly." Neera turned to face him, and Jake found himself lost in her mismatched eyes. "But there's something else you should know. If we do this, we'll need to pose as partners. Romantic partners. These underground markets are social events as much as criminal enterprises." Jake's heart hammered against his ribcage. "And that would be difficult for you?" A smile played at the corners of Neera's mouth. "I'm more concerned about whether it would be difficult for you. I'm not exactly standard human genetics." Jake reached out without thinking, his fingers tracing the subtle luminescent patterns on her cheek. She didn't pull away, and her skin felt like silk beneath his touch. "Neera," he said softly, "I've spent 8 years traveling between worlds, meeting every species imaginable. Trust me when I say that what makes you different is exactly what makes you beautiful." The breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, the professional mask slipped away completely. Jake. Before either could second-guess the moment, Jake leaned down and kissed her. She melted into his arms, her hybrid strength evident in the way she pulled him closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Well," Neera said, her voice slightly unsteady, "I guess we won't have trouble convincing people we're together." Jake grinned, still holding her close. "When do we infiltrate this underground market?" "Tomorrow night. There's a gathering in the old mining section. Invitation only, but I know someone who can get us in." She pulled back slightly, her expression turning serious again. "Jake, once we do this, there's no going back. If these people are as connected as I think they are, we could be walking into something much bigger than stolen chickens." "Good thing I won't be walking into it alone," he replied, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Besides, someone needs to find out why chickens have become the galaxy's most wanted commodity." As if summoned by his words, Jake's communication system chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as anonymous, but the content made both of them freeze. "Mr. Morrison, we know you're investigating the chicken situation. Stop now, or face consequences. Some questions are better left unasked. Some flavors are too dangerous to understand." Neera and Jake exchanged glances, the romantic moment shattered by the clear threat. "Well," Neera said grimly, "I guess we're definitely on the right track." "And I guess tomorrow night just became a lot more interesting," Jake replied, pulling her close again. Whatever conspiracy they were stumbling into, at least they'd be facing it together. Outside the Wanderer's dream, in the shadows of Harmony Hub's cargo bay, figures moved with purpose. The chicken theft had been just the beginning. Now, with a freight pilot and security officer getting too close to the truth, new plans would need to be made. The flavor wars were about to escalate, and Jake Morrison and Neera Ashworth had just painted targets on their backs. But as they stood together in the soft starlight streaming through the viewport, neither was thinking about danger. Instead, they were both wondering how a simple case of stolen chickens had led them not just to a galactic conspiracy, but to each other. The abandoned mining section of Harmony Hub pulsed with a different kind of energy than the legitimate commercial districts above. Here, in tunnels carved from asteroid rock and lit by the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi, the galaxy's most exclusive underground market thrived. Rico Delacroix adjusted his perfectly tailored jacket as he surveyed his domain, 30 vendors offering everything from rare spices to illegal delicacies, all catering to clients wealthy enough to pay premium prices for forbidden flavors. At 28, Rico had built his reputation on knowing what people wanted before they knew they wanted it. His dark hair was slicked back in the latest Centaurian fashion, and his brown eyes held the calculating gleam of someone who turned desire into profit. But tonight, those eyes kept drifting to the woman examining his most prized offerings with the intensity of a predator studying prey. She'd introduced herself simply as Tessa, claiming to represent private collectors interested in authentic Earth experiences. Everything about her screamed danger wrapped in elegance: platinum blonde hair that caught the market's ethereal lighting, ice blue eyes that seemed to see through every carefully constructed lie, and a body that moved with the controlled grace of someone trained in combat. Her black dress, simple yet expensive, did nothing to hide the fact that she was probably armed. Rico had been in the underground market business long enough to recognize law enforcement, corporate spies, and bounty hunters at a glance. Tessa was something else entirely, something that made his pulse race with equal parts attraction and apprehension. "Your chicken collection is impressive," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't place. "But I'm looking for something more, exclusive." Rico stepped closer, close enough to catch her scent, something expensive and distinctly human. "Define exclusive, beautiful." "In my experience, the rarer something is, the more dangerous it becomes to acquire." A smile played at her lips, neither confirming nor denying the implied threat. "I represent collectors who believe authentic chicken flavor is being diluted by synthetic alternatives. They're willing to pay substantial sums for guaranteed purity." "Guaranteed purity requires guaranteed sources," Rico replied, his voice dropping to a more intimate register. The kind of sources that don't advertise their existence. Tessa's ice blue eyes met his directly, and Rico felt something electric pass between them. She was definitely not what she appeared to be, but the attraction was genuine, and mutual, if he was reading her correctly. Perhaps we could discuss this more privately, she suggested. Away from prying ears? Rico's private office was hidden behind a false wall in the market's deepest tunnel. The space was surprisingly elegant for an underground operation, soft lighting, comfortable furniture, and walls lined with bottles containing essences and extracts from across the galaxy. It was here that Rico conducted his most sensitive business, and where he now found himself alone with the most intriguing woman he'd encountered in years. Drink, he offered, moving to a cabinet filled with rare liquors. Something local, Tessa replied, settling into a chair with fluid grace. I prefer to taste the authentic experience of wherever I am. Rico poured 2 glasses of Altarian crystal wine, noting how Tessa's eyes tracked his every movement. She was definitely gathering intelligence, but about what? His operation? The broader market? Or something more specific? So, Tessa, he said, settling into the chair across from her, what do your collectors really want to know about chicken? Everything, she replied without hesitation. Where it comes from, why it's so universally recognized, and why some people are willing to kill for it. The last part was delivered so casually that it took Rico a moment to process the implication. Kill for it? That's a rather dramatic assessment. Is it? Tessa leaned forward, her ice blue eyes intense. 3 freight pilots have disappeared in the past month, all carrying chicken shipments. 2 food vendors who claimed to serve authentic chicken flavor were found dead in their restaurants. And yesterday, a Galactic Food Authority inspector investigating chicken imports vanished without a trace. Rico felt the blood drain from his face. He'd heard rumors, dismissed them as competitor propaganda. But the way Tessa delivered the information, with the precision of someone who'd verified every detail, made it impossible to ignore. You're not a collector's representative, he said quietly. No, I'm not. Tessa's smile was sharp as a blade. I'm a journalist, and I'm investigating the story of the century. The question is, Rico Delacroix, are you part of the problem or part of the solution? Rico should have been angry at the deception. Should have been calling security, having her removed from his market. Instead, he found himself leaning closer, drawn by her intensity and the dangerous honesty in her eyes. What kind of story are we talking about? He asked. The kind that could bring down governments if I'm right. Tessa set down her wine, her expression growing serious. Rico, someone is manipulating the galactic food market on a scale that makes my head spin. Chicken isn't just popular, it's being used to control entire economic sectors. And everyone who gets too close to the truth ends up dead. That's impossible. It's just food. Is it? Tessa pulled out a small device, projecting holographic data into the space between them. Market analysis from the past 5 years. Look at the correlation between chicken price fluctuations and major political events. Look at the shipping routes for chicken products and how they mirror intelligence networks. Look at the genetic patents being filed for chicken-adjacent proteins by shell companies that don't officially exist. Rico studied the data, his business instincts immediately recognizing patterns that shouldn't exist. This suggests coordination across multiple sectors. Across multiple species, Tessa corrected. Rico, I think chicken flavor isn't just popular by accident. I think it's been engineered to be irresistible, and someone is using that fact to control galactic cuisine, and through it, galactic economics. The implications were staggering. Rico had built his entire operation on the assumption that he was simply capitalizing on natural market demand. If Tessa was right, he wasn't an entrepreneur, he was a pawn in someone else's game. Why are you telling me this? He asked. If I'm part of the conspiracy. Because you're not, Tessa interrupted. I've been watching your operation for weeks. You're good at what you do, but you're not connected to the big players. You're a middleman being used, just like everyone else. Rico stood up, pacing to the wall of essence bottles. Each one represented years of work, connections built across the galaxy, risks taken to bring rare flavors to those who could afford them. Now Tessa was suggesting it was all built on a lie. "What do you want from me?" he asked, not turning around. "Access. Information. Help." Her voice was softer now, almost vulnerable. "Rico, I can't do this alone. The people behind this conspiracy have resources I can't imagine. But you have connections in the underground market, contacts who might have seen things, heard things." Rico turned back to face her, and what he saw in her ice-blue eyes made his chest tighten. Beneath the professional journalist, beneath the dangerous spy, was a woman who was genuinely afraid, not for herself, but for the implications of what she was uncovering. "This is insane," he said quietly. "You're asking me to help you investigate something that's supposedly gotten people killed." "Yes. And if you're right, we'll be painting targets on our backs." "Yes. And if you're wrong, I'll have destroyed my business for nothing." "Yes." Rico stared at her for a long moment, weighing profit against principle, safety against the growing attraction he felt for this dangerous woman who'd walked into his life and turned it upside down. "Tessa," he said finally, "I don't even know your real name." "Tessa Nightshade. Investigative journalist for the Independent News Collective. And yes, that's my real name. My parents had a sense of humor about their daughter's future career." Despite everything, Rico found himself smiling. "Tessa Nightshade. Of course it is." "So?" she asked, standing up and moving closer to him. "Will you help me?" Rico looked down at her, struck by how small she seemed up close despite her dangerous presence. Without thinking, he reached out to touch her cheek, surprised when she didn't pull away. "You know this is crazy," he murmured. "The best stories usually are. And dangerous. I don't scare easily. And if we're both wrong about each other, then we'll figure it out together." Rico leaned down and kissed her, tasting wine and risk and the promise of something that went far beyond professional cooperation. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "All right, Tessa Nightshade," he said against her lips. "Let's go catch some conspirators. Together. Together." As they sealed their partnership with another kiss, neither noticed the small surveillance device hidden among Rico's essence bottles, its red recording light blinking steadily. Somewhere in the depths of space, powerful figures were already adjusting their plans to account for the journalist and the broker who just decided to become very dangerous to their carefully orchestrated conspiracy. The chicken wars were about to claim 2 more players, but this time, the pawns were fighting back. 3 hours later, in a secure communication facility on the far side of Harmony Hub, Tessa transmitted her first joint report with Rico to her editor at the Independent News Collective. The message was brief but explosive. Chicken conspiracy confirmed. Underground market compromised. Moving to next phase of investigation. If something happens to us, follow the genetic patents. The truth is bigger than we thought. TN. The response came back within minutes, story approved. Full resources authorized. Be careful, Tessa. You're not just chasing a story anymore, you're chasing the story. Don't let it kill you. Rico read the exchange over her shoulder, his arm around her waist as they stood in the dimly lit communications booth. "No going back now," he said quietly. "No going back," Tessa agreed, leaning into his embrace. "Rico?" "Yeah. For what it's worth, I'm glad I walked into your market. Even though it might get us both killed." Tessa turned in his arms, her ice-blue eyes reflecting the booth's soft lighting. "Especially because it might get us both killed. The best partnerships are forged in fire." As they kissed again, sealing their fate and their partnership, the galaxy's most dangerous conspiracy continued to unfold around them. But for the first time since beginning her investigation, Tessa Nightshade wasn't facing the unknown alone. And for the first time in his career, Rico Delacroix was about to discover that some things were worth more than profit, even if they cost everything. The chicken conspiracy had claimed its most dangerous enemies yet, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided that some truths were worth dying for.